What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, once again, Ryan Thomas, as usual, the host of this podcast since day one, probably because I invented it, probably because I started it. That's usually how it goes. When you make your own show, you're the host of it, right? And along the way, I've had some awesome guests on the show, plenty more to come up from the wide world of sports, whether it's MMA, whether it's NFL, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, you name it. I've had a lot of really great guests on this show, and there'll be plenty more to come. But tonight's special edition episode was not planned. This was not a planned episode. There was news that was dropped by the leading journalist inside the sport of mixed martial arts, in my opinion, and that is Ariel Helwani, where Ariel took to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the major social platforms to announce that he would have an hour-long interview with Conor McGregor that would be aired as a Sports Center special. So this aired at 8, and it was pre-recorded, pre-filmed. Probably at some point today this was actually filmed, or maybe it was filmed even yesterday, due to the fact that Ariel has his show Ariel and the Bad Guy in the ESPN studios as well. He's on ESPN, every day. He's an ESPN analyst. So who's to say when this was actually filmed? Who's to say when this was actually recorded? But it was pre-recorded, and I'm very thankful that this took place, that this interview took place for a wide variety of reasons, which I will get into starting now. So, we have two sides to every argument, the negative side and the positive side. And as I listened to this interview, I had a lot of takeaways from it. As I just said, I was very thankful for the fact that Conor and Ariel talked about a lot of the things that they talked about. As an MMA fan, as a guy that has written plenty of MMA articles on Conor McGregor, as a podcast host that has talked about Conor McGregor a lot on his podcast over the last 3, almost 4 years, this interview was a pleasant surprise. And I think the first positive that I can take from it is that Conor McGregor owned up to the things that he had done dating back these last few years, the instances of just getting in trouble with the law, reacting to leeches and just present people in his life that are just not positive, do not have his best interest at heart. Really, the people that have oftentimes gotten into the heads of these famous fighters and have taken everything from them. We've seen this story before, and it was alluded to in the interview that we have seen this story before, but diehard boxing fans, diehard MMA fans have never seen it in MMA because we've never had a star like Conor McGregor in MMA that can transcend MMA and boxing and really just sports as a whole. So you talk about some of the big names in sports right now, just across all platforms, all games, all sports. LeBron James, Tom Brady, Conor McGregor, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper for baseball. Tiger Woods, obviously, is still the main draw of golf. You got Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid in hockey. Those are the main draws. And Conor McGregor still being one of those guys, just as I said earlier when I talked about Conor McGregor's career in this morning's episode, that you have to be a real special person, a real special athlete in order to still have the masses in the palm of your hands the way that Conor McGregor does. Everyone is watching his every move. Everyone is kind of galvanizing him and poking and prodding him and making sure that he's on his P's and Q's. And when he's not, he gets called out for it. And rightfully so. That is something that happens to famous people, whether they like it or not. Their every move is looked at. Their every move is watched. Their every move is just critiqued and poked and prodded. And to an extent, obviously, in certain situations, you want to give the guy his privacy. But in this situation, where it was literally on video of Conor McGregor punching a old gentleman in the head at a bar due to the fact that the guy would not drink his whiskey, I think that that's when people took a step back. Myself, I can only speak for myself actually in saying this, but most people I could definitely say took a step back and said, wow, we have a much, much bigger problem here. We have a problem with a fighter that has fallen. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at these last few years, you look at the career that he had embarked on, you looked at what he has accomplished to where he is now, and I had a thought today in the midst of my day, just driving to work and driving home and everything, that Conor McGregor has not won a fight in MMA since 2016. That's almost 4 years ago. So we're about to turn into August here. We're about to turn into September here of 2019. And this guy has not recorded an official registered win on his record since August of 2016 over Nate Diaz. And as I alluded to post UFC 241, that the sport is moving on from Conor McGregor. The sport has moved on from Conor McGregor. The fans might be on their P's and Q's trying to find out what his next big move is, but the sport, the UFC, has 100% moved on without him. Because they have to. This is business. The show goes on. When one star leaves, you find another one. You create another one. You market another one. It's happened whether you're George St. Pierre. We'll go even back further. It happens whether you're Royce Gracie, whether you're Matt Hughes, whether you're George St. Pierre, whether you're Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz. It'll happen to John Jones someday. As invincible as John Jones appears to be, I don't see him really losing to anyone anytime soon, especially at 205 pounds. The show will go on. His career will end. Daniel Cormier, I talked about that. Will his career end now or later? If his career is ending soon, they will find someone to replace him. They will find somebody to fill that hole of his star power. And it's a hole indeed that I think warrants a true search for a guy like that. I don't think you'll find many guys like DC in the sport, but I talked about that in the last show, and you can tune into that and much, much more in that DC episode. DC, is this it? Back to Conor, though. Conor is irreplaceable. Once Conor decides that it's finally time for him to hang him up, once he's achieved everything, making more memories, because I don't think Conor McGregor is done yet, but I've also said that I think he is. And when I say that I think he is, it's due to the fact that this guy has not fought, and all of the things outside of the octagon have led me to believe in his personal life that he is done. But then you watch this hour-long interview, and Conor has a way of just changing my mind just like this. Boom, snap of the fingers. Makes me think to myself, okay, he is hungry. He is eager to return. He does want a big opponent. But I think the common theme throughout the interview, one of which featured great questions from Ariel Helwani, per usual. I mean, you come to expect that when you're watching an Ariel Helwani interview. The guy just, his interview skills are off the charts. His ability to ask the questions that everyone wants to hear, and everyone wants the answers to these questions. He asks those questions and even digs in a little bit. He dug a little bit deep into Conor McGregor, asking him if he believed that Conor McGregor had an anger problem. And you would have to ask a fighter something like that in a situation of this magnitude, because it's not the first instance of Conor McGregor showing that he has a little bit of an anger problem, where he flies off the handle, where he does things that most people wouldn't even think to do. And Conor just kind of reluctantly said, no, but I am getting things worked out. I am making my way back. And that was the common theme, was that Conor McGregor was very apologetic. He was very emotional, not, crying his eyes out or anything like that, but he spoke with a lot of conviction, as he always has. But I think this conviction was much more different. It was calculated. It was frantic, that was one theme as well. The speech of Conor McGregor I thought was very interesting. He didn't really swear a lot. He spoke very fast. He did seem very antsy, nervous, and I've never really seen him like that in an interview where he's nervous. It's very rare to see him nervous in any instance. Talking about a guy that, 4 years ago he fought Jose Aldo, a pound-for-pound legend at the time and always will be. It starches him in one punch in 13 seconds. Where is that guy, though? That was then and this is now, and I have a tough time wondering if we will ever see that version of Conor McGregor ever again. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I do see it again. I hope that we get the opportunity to see Conor McGregor give us more memories as fans watching the sport and as podcast hosts and radio hosts and everyone that follows the MMA world. Conor McGregor provided a lot of memories for us, whether it was his climb up to the 145 ladder or fighting Eddie Alvarez or Floyd Mayweather, but I feel like the glass is still half full with a fighter as special as Conor McGregor with the skill set that he has. It's very rare to see that in the sport of MMA and achieve what he has achieved at that high of a level. This is not just some one-trick pony. This is a guy that has a lot of skills. Granted, I don't think he's the greatest wrestler in MMA by any stretch. I think that could be agreed upon by anyone who's anyone in the mixed martial arts world, but us not seeing his skills in that octagon really hurt us. They really hurt us as fans because we're missing out. We're missing out on big fights. And you know what? I honestly formulated this opinion over the course of the last couple of years, obviously, where Conor has been inactive, where his last fight was last October, almost a year, but prior to that, he took a year off after the Mayweather fight. Prior to that, he took a long time off prior to the Floyd fight. So there's been these big gaps in his career where he hasn't really fought that much, whether it's inside the sport of MMA or boxing at all. He hasn't really fought that much. So here is an opportunity for Conor to tell the world that he is coming back. He is going to make a comeback. He is going to do what he set out to do. Respect, retribution, all the things that he said were very poignant and very motivational, the way he spoke. But I will say that there were dynamics of the interview where I couldn't help but think this one thing, and it's a little bit silly. But I look at Conor McGregor's career right now very similarly to a movie that I just watched. It's on Netflix. It's a movie I've watched probably 42 million times. It's a movie that is in a very famous franchise. Now, bear with me here. But the movie of Conor McGregor's career is very similar to Rocky Balboa. I see a lot of similarities. The down and out, broke, barroom brawler, club fighter, turned golden opportunity into another golden opportunity and made the most of that golden opportunity and then achieved the fame, the fortune, the relationship that he has with his fiancée, Dee Devlin, the kids in his life that he now has. He's got 2 kids, the cars, the mansions, everything. When you have all of that, and the great, I believe Evander Holyfield or Mike Tyson, one of the two said this, might have been Mike Tyson, it's very hard to get out of bed when you sleep in silk sheets and silk pajamas. Very tough. And that is what type of lifestyle Conor has really embraced these last 4 or 5 years. And I look at Rocky 3 in particular. Rocky 3, prior to Rocky fighting Clubber Lang, and I know it's a movie, but there were dynamics to the Rocky films that made it so realistic You could draw a lot of parallels from those movies to actual real fighting stories where you had a fighter that finally made it, finally got the money, finally won the title, finally did all the things that he dreamed he would do, but never thought would have been a reality. And now that it is a reality, it's kind of alluded to in the movie that some of the fighters that he's fought were handpicked, that were decent matchups for him. And I'm taking nothing away from Conor in saying this, but that is a fact. That there were fights along the way, whether it was at 145 or whether it was at 155. The Eddie Alvarez fight, a lot of people thought that was a bad matchup, but a lot of people thought that that was a tailor-made matchup for Conor. A guy that comes straight forward, a guy that's a little bit smaller than him, a guy that really doesn't have true knockout power, but a guy that could take Conor down and maybe work him. Conor avoided the takedown, landed the hard shots early, which made Eddie a little bit delirious and allowed Conor to really sink his teeth in and bite down on the mouthpiece and eventually finish that fight. That was a tailor-made matchup for Conor. That fight, the style of Eddie Alvarez versus the style of Conor McGregor, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about mixed martial arts, the style of one fighter versus the style of another. The fact that it's alluded to in Rocky 3 that, yeah, some of the title defenses were handpicked. They weren't setups, but they were handpicked. They was handpicked. They was great fighters, but this guy will kill you to death. Obviously, that's my impersonation of Mickey Goldmill, but Mickey saying to Rocky that Clubber Lang is a completely different animal. This guy is not your average, contender that you've ran through. This guy is really something. This guy is special. This guy is unique. Conor McGregor had the belt at 155 pounds. Conor McGregor decided, I'm going to take this leverage of beating Eddie Alvarez, of beating Jose Aldo, becoming the first champ in UFC history, the first simultaneous champ, whether I defended these belts or not. I'm going to take this gold, take this leverage, and parlay it into a fight with Floyd Mayweather for $100 million rather than making $5 million or $10 million or $20 million, even $50 million to fight the 25-0, 24-0 at the time, possibly, undefeated Dagestani fighter Khabib Nurmagomedov. I look at Khabib Nurmagomedov as the Clubber Lang to Conor McGregor. I look at Khabib Nurmagomedov as the guy that destroyed him. I mean, it really broke his will. Really broke his psyche. And I say that confidently because I hear Conor's interpretation of the Khabib fight, and I don't think he's right. The fact that, Khabib got him down to the mat, really didn't do a whole lot in the first round. I even said that after the fight, post-fight, on the Khabib versus Conor post-fight show on the podcast. You can tune into that on YouTube. It's available on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel, as is any and all episodes of the Thomas Take dating back to 2016. You have a guy that set out to say that he was going to do this, say that he was going to do that. He continuously says he's going to do this, say he's going to do that. And he loses to Khabib. Everything that he said he was going to do, not only did he lose to Khabib, as I said this morning, he got dropped by Khabib. Dropped by Khabib and down and out of commission after that. It was like the wheels were just like falling off the car. He just didn't know what to do after that. Tried his best, but honestly, I think he was gassed again, which that is another layer to his career that has just come up short these last few years, that Conor gets gassed in fights. It's probably because of these gaps in his fights, and it is probably due to the fact that the guy drinks like a fish. He's got his own whiskey line. Of course he does. So where I'm going with this is there's a part in Rocky 3 where, obviously Mickey says to Rocky, this guy will kill you to death. We don't need it. We don't want it. If you fight this guy with your style, he'll knock you out inside of 3 rounds. And Rocky says he's crazy. Really, Mickey wasn't crazy. Nobody knows a fighter better than his trainer, better than the people around him. And you hear these rumblings of John Kavanagh, the trainer of Conor McGregor, a guy that has been his ride-or-die trainer. Conor talked about the loyalty that he has to him through thick and thin. They will always be a pair. MMA match made in heaven. They were looked at as the model trainer-fighter relationship, friendship, brotherhood, almost father and son-esque relationship that they have. Now they're at odds. Now they're at this point where there's a little bit of a friction and awkward tension between the two of them, because he felt like Conor didn't take the Khabib fight as seriously as he should have. He felt like Conor McGregor was not as eager for the rematch as Conor McGregor was saying or is saying that he is. So now I don't know what to believe. Do I believe the trainer or do I believe the fighter? Do I believe the fighter that's punching old guys in the head? Do I believe the fighter that's throwing dollies through plate glass windows on a bus? Am I believing the fighter that smashes a fan's phone? Or am I blaming the trainer that's just softly saying that this is the situation now? This guy is making so much money. Mickey Goldmill said to Rocky Balboa, he said, 3 years ago, you were a legend. You had a cast iron jaw. You were hungry. You were this. You were that. And then the worst thing that could ever happen to any fighter, you got civilized. Conor McGregor has been the most civilized fighter in the history of combat sports. That is not a bold statement. That is not a debatable statement. You really think about this. Really think about this, guys. And girls out there that love Conor. Really think about this. There is no fighter that has been more civilized in the history of combat sports than Conor McGregor. Not Muhammad Ali. Not Joe Frazier. Mike Tyson. None of anyone from boxing. I sure as hell know nobody from MMA. I've been around this MMA game since it started. I damn well know who the most famous MMA fighter of all time is, and it's Conor McGregor. It's not even close. I know that. You know that. But all those guys that I mentioned, all those boxing heroes, Ali, Frazier, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Robinson, Jake LaMotta, Jack Dempsey, Max Schmeling, Joe Louis. I mean, they never dealt with social media. They never dealt with 24/7 access to their lives. They never dealt with that. They never dealt with the craze of social media, the obsession of social media. I think the most dangerous thing besides being famous, the most dangerous thing besides being famous is being famous on social media. It is a curse. It is a true curse to a famous person. It puts a hex on them, the likes of which they've never seen. Because then they're maintaining this illusion that they're something that they're not. They're maintaining that they are doing this when they're not, doing that when they're not. They're being this person when they are not. And Conor kind of alluded to that in this interview. He said, I was all in the training sessions, but all out of the training sessions when I was done. I was living my life, getting into the jungle, probably meaning the party style, the bar life, all that stuff. We cannot have this as a fighter. We cannot. You got to go back to the beginning. The way to get the old Conor McGregor back is to get the eye of the tiger and go back to the beginning. And what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Well, it's forget everything you thought you know, or forget everything you thought you knew, and start from scratch. Rebuild yourself from the ground up. That's what he's going to have to do in order to beat Khabib. He's going to have to take the bare bones lifestyle that he once lived and be willing to relive that all over again. And I don't think he is. Even if it meant to beat Khabib, he needs the nutritionists, the conditioning programs, the fancy schmancy training camps. That's not what led him to get to where he is today. It was the grind. It was the blood, sweat, and tears that led him to fame. That's what's beautiful about his story, is that this guy did come from a rough background. He did have struggle. He couldn't even provide for his own family. And I don't say that in a mocking, negative way. It's just fact. We've watched the documentaries. We've watched the bits and pieces of his life play itself out the way that it has. And we can take a lot of inspiration from those facts, from those things. That, Conor at one point was not well off. And now, he's very well off, no doubt about it. But you put yourself in these situations, and when you continue to put yourself in these situations, when we're as fans talking about who are the real greats, who are the best of the best, we obviously know that Conor McGregor is the most famous fighter of all time, but is he the best fighter of all time? It's not even close. It's not even close. I have guys that I went to high school with, guys that I know from college, and guys that I've met throughout my journey through this podcast, and they tell me that Conor McGregor is the best of all time. Honestly, I laugh when they say that. I have to laugh when I hear them say that, because it just shows that he's the most famous, hyped fighter. And I didn't say overhyped. I'm saying hyped. The hype is real. The guy has true immense talent. There is no doubt about it. Nobody's ever boxed that way in an octagon before. Nobody's ever been able to do the things that he's done in an octagon before. But that doesn't make him the best. The best, to me, has such a broad meaning. It's how you represent yourself in the sport, out of the sport. What did you do to make the sport bigger? What did you do to make the sport better? How compelling, how entertaining were your fights, and who did you beat? And I think, obviously, George St. Pierre is my guy. That's the guy that's number one for me. Anderson Silva is up there. John Jones is up there, but John Jones is just as much a dirtbag as anybody on that roster, and we know that. People make mistakes, but the mistakes that John Jones has made, if it were me, I wouldn't even be talking right now on this podcast. I'd be probably in a cell somewhere. I hate to say that, but that's just fact. I think John Jones is an immense talent. I think he's somebody that deserves the opportunity to reclaim his glory in his own right, due to the fact that he did suffer throughout his career due to the mistakes that he made. But it's not like it wasn't deserved. He deserved to go through that stuff. He put himself through that stuff. I feel like as athletes, we as fans, we want to see them compete so badly that we're almost willing to write off the things that they do, that if it were you or if it were me doing those things, we wouldn't have maybe that's no big deal. Other athletes have done worse. That's not the point, that other athletes have done worse. The point is that they have done enough that if it were me or if it were you, they would be in a situation, a much different situation than what they are in. I really hope from the bottom of my heart that Conor can put it back together, that he can reclaim that type of fighter that he was 2016, 2015, 14. Those 3 years of his career were phenomenal. And there were years that I think definitely changed him. I don't know for the better. Only time will tell on that. Thus far, it has led him down a weird trajectory that has forced himself to be better than what he was or what he has been. And I think that a lot can be taken into consideration here. You got a lot of enablers. You have a guy that runs this company. And for all my criticisms of Dana White, I think this is my number one criticism. When you are making Dana money, you're his best buddy. You're his best friend. But if you make a mistake and you're not fighting because of that mistake, Dana will go on the Jim Rome show. He'll go on any big time. We'll just say Jim Rome because that's what actually happened and what has happened before. Dana White goes on all the big shows, Jim Rome, and says, Conor may never fight again. When you get this much, Conor needs to realize, Conor needs to do this, Conor needs to do that. Maybe Dana has actually been a part of the problem this whole time. Maybe Conor's so great. He's this, he's that. Maybe the enabling of Conor McGregor started with the guy that is the most powerful person in the sport, period. More powerful than any fighter. Dana White has all the cards. Conor McGregor might have the ace, but Dana White's got all the other ones. And I look at it as like a game of Uno. You know, Conor might have a blue 3, and Dana will just keep making him draw 4. You know, like it's just he's just got the power over everybody. And when you're making Dana White money, you're his best buddy. But when you're not making Dana White money anymore, or for even a year, he'll go out and talk smack about you. Because that's what the press wants to hear. He gives them what they want. Well, if I was Dana, I'd say, this guy's still my number one draw. Make no mistake about it. Has he put himself in rough situations? Yes. Is that an embarrassment to him and his family? Yes. Am I going to embarrass him any more than he's already embarrassed right now? No, I'm not. But there Dana is, being Dana, laughing, smiling, as rich as anybody involved with the letters UFC outside of the owners. And here you have fighters like Nate Diaz, who Dana labeled a non-needle mover, someone that did not move the needle. You got Conor McGregor, who wasn't even discovered by Dana. Real story goes down as Lorenzo Fertitta heard about him and then said, Dana, fly out to Ireland and check this guy out. There's a lot of stuff about that really takes me back. It makes me think to myself, if Lorenzo Fertitta was still involved with the UFC, if Frank Fertitta was involved with the UFC, would this stuff fly? Would this stuff happen? Would Dana be saying the stuff that he's saying? Probably, but would these fighters be putting themselves in these positions if they had the Fertitta brothers overseeing the sport still, overseeing the UFC, which ultimately is the sport because it's so massive? I honestly don't know. I don't know if this would still happen, but what I do know is I really do hope Conor gets it right. Because when he does, I feel like the game will turn itself on its head again, and they won't know what to do with it. I won't know what to do with it when it happens. I hold out faith that it will happen, but I feel like, going back to my Rocky 3 reference, Conor McGregor just simply has way too much going on. He needs to eliminate all distractions, including his kids. When a fighter has a child, it is, I think it's like taking a limb off in terms of being in that cage. You're fighting with 2 legs and 1 arm when you have a kid after you have a kid as a fighter. You really look at that dynamic of fighters that have had kids, you know, after their fighting careers have already started. Chris Weidman, BJ Penn. Now that's an entity in and of itself. I can name more, but I won't. Just for, you know, I feel, I hate to say that, but that is a fact. When fighters have kids, it changes them. It changes them. for sure. You don't have that predatorial killer instinct anymore because you're literally raising something from birth. You're growing something into something bigger and better. I think that there's a real dynamic to that, for sure. Whether we see Conor this year or not, 2019 remains to be seen. I think we will see him. I think we need to see him in 2019, whether he's fighting, Justin Gaethje or Nate Diaz or whoever. We got to see Conor back in 2019. I was really grateful for that interview. Ariel Helwani did everybody a real great service providing us with that interview, as did Conor, and we'll see what happens from here. I hope this guy gets it straight. I hope this guy gets it right, because if he doesn't, it'll just be a notorious story of what could have been. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow on Spotify. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take.